the war on drugs has not been solely limited to incarceration, and that the negative impact of the war on drugs has not been limited to incarceration. But also we had legislated rippling effects that also seems to have been codified in our housing system. Are you aware of HUD's one-strike rule, which evicts tenants for a single incidence of criminal activity, no matter how minor, with no holistic review?
There is the ability of local jurisdictions to alter that rule.
But federally, this provision still persists, correct?
As far as I know, it's still intact.
And so a person could be stop and frisked and be found in possession of a small amount of marijuana and then be evicted or have their entire family evicted from public housing.
That is a possibility.
Watch what happens when socialist theater meets surgical precision. AOC thought she could trap Dr. Ben Carson with gotcha questions, but what happened next is absolutely brilliant. Folks, before we dive in, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell, because the mainstream media won't tell you what you're about to hear. Let's get into it.
For joining us today. Secretary Carson, in December 2017, you delivered a keynote at the Manhattan Institute where you stated, quote, "The war on poverty sometimes conflicted with the war on drugs, which often dealt harshly with nonviolent offenders, taking men away from their families and disproportionately affecting minority communities." Are these your words?
Yes.
Do you acknowledge that the war on drugs disproportionately impacted Black communities and communities of color, despite marijuana and other drug use levels being comparable to white communities?
Traditionally, that has been the case. And
I see here, are you also aware that when a formerly incarcerated person is homeless, there's a 60% chance that they will be rearrested? But if that same person has access to housing, the percentage drops to 29%.
Housing is one of the factors that is beneficial in preventing recidivism.
I'm concerned here that the war on drugs has not been solely limited to incarceration, and that the negative impact of the war on drugs has not been limited to incarceration. But also we had legislated rippling effects that also seems to have been codified in our housing system. Are you aware of HUD's one-strike rule, which evicts tenants for a single incidence of criminal activity, no matter how minor, with no holistic review?
There is the ability of local jurisdictions to alter that rule.
But federally, this provision still persists, correct?
As far as I know, it's still intact.
And so a person could be stop and frisked and be found in possession of a small amount of marijuana and then be evicted or have their entire family evicted from public housing.
That is a possibility.
Are you aware that owners and public housing authorities can subject tenants to tests for alcohol and drugs?
They can require that, yes.
And I see here that we also have no-fault policies where an entire family can be evicted for the criminal activity of a guest of the household, even without the knowledge of anyone in that household. Are you aware of that provision as well?
The use of such activity is extremely limited, if ever used.
But they are still codified in federal law, correct?
Is it on the federal books? As far as I know, it's been on the books for many, many years.
Do you support reversing some of these provisions?
Do I prevent which provisions?
Say the no-fault policy.
I can talk about that on individual cases if you have an example that you want to talk about.
Well, I'd say, would you support being able to move some of these policies over to a more holistic review? You know, you yourself asked for case-by-case consideration. Should that case-by-case consideration be codified in federal law instead of having blanket one-strike or no-fault policies?
I'm always in favor of more flexibility.
Well, I'm happy to hear that, Secretary Carson. I'd also like to highlight there's been much talk about the issue with NYCHA and public housing, and it's horrifying, the conditions that are happening in NYCHA. It's horrifying that People are living through winter without heat, opening their ovens to try to make sure that they're able to sleep through the night. But I think it's important to notice that this is not about throwing more money to the problem. This is about throwing the money at the problem. NYCHA and public housing across the country has been starved by members of Congress for over 15 years. And that deficit has built up for many, many years, which has led to, in New York City alone, a $32 billion price tag to make sure that we get people basic heat, hot water, and so on. And I don't think that, no matter what policy changes we make, you can't take food away from a child and then not understand why they can't or don't eat. And I think that that's exactly what's happening with our public housing program. Chairwoman, I would like to seek unanimous consent to submit to the record a New York Times article on what it would take to fix New York's public housing.
Without objection, such is the order.
Thank you very much. And I'd also like to make of note that the provisions that we wanted to reverse, including one strike and no fault policies, are being introduced in our bill on the Fair Chance at Housing Act. Thank you very much.
Answer. But this is something that's within your bailiwick, my dear sir. How much from housing vouchers?
Again, I can give you that number, but...
Well, if you would give it to me, I would greatly appreciate it, because I'd like to go on to community development block grants.
Well, here's my point. I agree with you that it's difficult to do these things.
That has little to do with my question. You're answering a question that I'm not asking, to be quite candid with you. So would you kindly tell me how much HUD how much you're going to cut from the HUD budget as it relates to housing vouchers? Now, if you don't know, it's okay to say you don't know, Mr. Carson. I don't hold you to things that you don't know. How much are they going to cut?
Let's just move on and say that I don't want to offer a number because it's subject
Why
to
would the Secretary of HUD not give the number, the amount that you're cutting from housing vouchers, Mr. Carson?
Because
you're the Secretary of HUD.
Because
you're making the cut.
Because we've already talked about the total amount of the cuts.
Well, the total amount does not help me when it comes to the housing vouchers. I have people who use housing vouchers, and I need to be able to explain to them, Mr. Carson, how much the cut portends for them. How much, Mr. Carson?
Let's hear your number.
Well, Mr. Carson, forgive me for coughing while speaking, but Mr. Carson, you're the witness testifying today. And if you want a moment to ask someone behind you, I would gladly accord you that moment.
I don't want to open the book and look at the numbers.
I see. So you choose not to say how much you're cutting from housing vouchers, or how much you're cutting from community block grants, Mr. Carson.
I want to talk about...
Mr. Carson, you don't get to talk about what you want to today. You get to talk about what I want you to talk about. You get to answer the questions that I pose, Mr. Carson.
Yeah, but I also get to answer the question the way I want to.
Well, you can answer them the way you want, but if you want to show a lack of knowledge, you can do this. It's quite all right, Mr. Carson. So now, how much from community development block grants, Mr. Secretary?
Again, I'm not willing to sit there and
So you don't know how much from community development block grants?
I'm not going to go through the list, this much, and this much.
Folks, what you just witnessed is exactly why the left cannot win on substance. AOC walked into that hearing room thinking she was going to get her viral moment, thinking she could trap Dr. Ben Carson with emotionally charged questions and walk away looking like some kind of hero to her socialist base. Instead, she ran face first into something the left absolutely cannot handle: calm, conservative logic. Let me tell you what really happened here. This wasn't a genuine attempt to solve problems or understand policy. This was political theater, pure and simple. AOC had her script prepared, her statistics cherry-picked, and her narrative ready to go. She wanted to paint Dr. Carson as some heartless bureaucrat continuing the war on drugs through housing policy. But here's what she didn't count on. Dr. Carson is a neurosurgeon. This man operated on brains. He doesn't get rattled by a freshman congresswoman with a sociology degree trying to score political points. Watch how Carson responds throughout this entire exchange. When she quotes his own words back to him about the war on drugs affecting minorities, does he panic? Does he backtrack? No, he owns it immediately. He says, yes, that's exactly what I said. Right there, her first attack is neutralized. She wanted controversy, and he gave her agreement on basic facts. Then she moves to the one-strike rule. trying to make it sound like this absolute tyrannical policy. But what does Carson do? He immediately adds the context she deliberately left out. Local jurisdictions can modify that rule. That's federalism, folks. That's conservative governance. Power distributed locally where communities can make decisions that fit their specific needs. But that doesn't fit her narrative of big bad federal government, so she ignored it. This is the fundamental difference between conservative and liberal thinking. Conservatives like Dr. Carson understand that real policy is complex, that one size doesn't fit all, and that local control matters. The left wants sweeping federal mandates that ignore individual circumstances because it's easier to campaign on simple slogans than complex reality. Notice how every time AOC tries to pin him down with a yes or no question on complicated policy, Carson refuses to play that game. When she asks about reversing provisions, he asks which specific provisions. When she brings up hypotheticals, he asks for real examples. This drives the left absolutely insane because their entire strategy depends on oversimplification and emotional manipulation. Carson is operating in the world of facts, policy details, and real consequences. And look at his demeanor, completely calm, respectful, patient. He lets her finish her long, winding questions designed to trap him, and then he responds with simple, direct truth. No theatrics, no performance, just competence. This is what real leadership looks like. This is what happens when you put a brilliant, accomplished individual in a position of authority instead of someone whose main qualification is being good at Twitter. The left loves to talk about compassion and caring, but when you actually dig into their policies, it's all about control and expanding government power. Dr. Carson represents true conservative compassion, empowering local communities, considering individual circumstances, and understanding that effective policy requires nuance, not slogans. This exchange perfectly illustrates why Americans are waking up to the socialist agenda. When you strip away the emotional appeals and viral moment attempts, what's left? Empty rhetoric that crumbles under basic scrutiny. Dr. Carson didn't need to raise his voice or perform for cameras. Truth and logic were all he needed. That's the power of conservative principles, folks.